Fabulous. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our presentation, Media with a Message, the Power of Socially Conscious Entertainment. And thank you for joining us after we had to reschedule due to all of the crazy weather. My name is Brittany O'Neill, and I'm a Humanities and Social Sciences librarian at LSU Libraries. And my co-organizer and co-moderator of today's event is Rebecca Kelley, who's our mass communication librarian. And before we get started, a bit of housekeeping. So I'm going to go ahead and stop our share here. Bit of housekeeping, the live transcript function should be enabled. You can turn on the closed captioning by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of the screen if you need it. Please note that there might be some transcription errors as it is live, but those will be corrected before a recording shared. This event is being recorded, and we will email the recording to all the participants after the event, along with proof of attendance for those of you who need it for extra credit opportunities. Everyone is currently muted except the presenter and moderators, and we ask that you stay muted throughout the event to avoid any background noise. However, we will have time after today's presentation to answer any questions that you hopefully will have. Please feel free to enter your questions directly into the chat at any point during the presentation, or you can wait until the Q&A session at the end where you can unmute yourself if you would prefer. Today's virtual presentation is hosted by LSU Libraries. We support the academic mission of the university by fostering teaching, learning, and research. Through our commitment to excellence in collections, services, and spaces, the libraries serve as an indispensable intellectual resource for the state of Louisiana and to communities worldwide. This is the fourth year that we have hosted Media Literacy Week events. So we would like to thank our deans, Dean Stanley Wilder and Associate Deans Lois Kuiper-Rushing and Gina Costello, for their continued support of our Media Literacy Week programming at LSU Libraries. The mission of Media Literacy Week is to highlight the power of media literacy education and its essential role in education today. And with that, I will hand it over to Rebecca to introduce our fabulous speaker.
Thank you, Brittany. As Brittany mentioned earlier, I'm the Mass Communication Librarian with LSU Libraries. And in this position, I've had the pleasure of working with all the wonderful faculty and staff and students at the Manship School of Mass Communication. And I'm excited to introduce and welcome today's speaker, Dr. Meghan Sanders. So I'm going to give a little bio for Dr. Sanders, just so you guys are familiar with what she does here at LSU. So Dr. Sanders joined the LSU faculty in 2006. She's an associate professor with the Manship School of Mass Communication and holds the Katheryn, Pate, Callahan professorship. Dr. Sanders specializes in media and psychology, focusing on the psychological effects of mass media as they pertain to psychological and subjective well-being. Her research focuses on enjoyment and appreciation of entertainment, morality and narrative engagement, and positive media psychology. Dr. Sanders serves as director of the Media Effects Lab, a research facility dedicated to exploring the underlying thought processes and emotions associated with using mediated communication. From 2002 to 2016, she served as the Associate Dean for Research and Strategic Planning for the Manship School. Dr. Sanders also served as director of the Scripps Howard Academic Leadership Academy, a program aimed at mentoring new and would-be administrators by providing 4 days of leadership training and professional networking. She earned her undergraduate degree in mass communication at Dillard University, her master's degree in media studies from the Pennsylvania State University, and her doctorate in mass communication from the Pennsylvania State University. Dr. Sanders, we're looking forward to hearing your presentation today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to everyone who came back 2 weeks later to be a part of this presentation. I'm glad to know that everyone made it through the storm safely, and that we're able to get together right now and talk about some of the research that I've been working on connected to the role that entertainment can play in social consciousness and social justice attitudes. And so I'm really thrilled to be a part of this year's events and really excited to speak with you about this work without a severe weather threat looming. I'm going to be that person and ask, can you see my screen? Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. That's great. All right, so I'm just going to jump in and start with some basic ideas that tend to drive a lot of my research. And I think in talking to Brittany and Rebecca about what we wanted to focus on for Media Literacy Week this year, it became very clear that storytelling is a big part of our understanding of media and our interactions with media. And so in thinking about that, it's important to understand, and it's probably pretty commonplace to understand, that storytelling covers everything. Storytelling is everywhere, as is entertainment and as is leisure activity. And so if we're thinking about storytelling and the role that storytelling has played across time, we can go as far back as centuries. I tend to go only as far back as Aristotle, who in Poetics talked a lot about the role that theatrical dramas can play in our well-being. This is when he introduced this idea of catharsis, which argues that in which he argued that the exposure to theatrical dramas arouses strong enough emotions in us such that they allow for us to purge the emotions that we may be holding back in our daily lives, and that we may not be expressing in healthy ways. Going to the theater, experiencing stories, experiencing dramas allows, and the emotions related to that, allows for us to experience these emotions in a safe way and in a healthy way. It's at this point that he also argued for this idea that there's a moral rationale for our reactions as well. So we feel displeasure for actions that we think are unjust, and pleasure or satisfaction for actions that are in line with our precepts of fairness and justice. And so for many cultures, the only way that culture and history could be passed down and continues to be passed down is through the sharing and telling of stories. And sometimes the stories themselves can serve as a mechanism of survival. Sometimes they serve as an act of resistance. The format or the mechanisms through which the stories are shared today have obviously changed from the mechanisms and formats that we've seen in the past. Along the same line, we've also seen that the forms of entertainment has changed. So we've seen entertainment shift from being the domain of the rich and the highbrow to an entitlement across classes, beginning really in 1 AD, where we started to see a lot of variation in entertainment and inclusion of different classes of people. And this ranges from games that people began playing. We can think about the chariot races and the gladiatorial fights, which we see counterparts of today in certain in specific sports. But even within sports, there's a certain theatrics that's connected to that. There are stories that are connected to that. My nephew, when he was younger, he was a big wrestling fan. And so I will watch wrestling with him as a way to connect with him. And they have these stories. So every wrestler has their character and their story arc, and there's this hero and there's this villain. They build their wrestling drama around the stories. If we're thinking about even something like football or basketball, there's your team and there's my team, right? And so there's this story or these specific connections that are built. So stories permeate really multiple facets of entertainment as well. And so in thinking about this from a psychological perspective, it's important to also understand what we get from our general media selections. And this is not an exhaustive list, but these categories that I'm about to go over do lay a pretty nice foundation to consider entertainment specifically, beyond this idea of something that's frivolous or something that doesn't matter as much as more serious content as something as, say, news does. And so when we're thinking about our media selections, we are driven to make these selections for a variety of reasons. We're motivated by different factors. And so among the ways media researchers have explored this question include understanding media use as a way to meet our needs. So our needs to escape from everyday life, our need to relax, our needs for information gathering, for example. We may also make selections based on our mood, so as a way to manage our moods or cope with emotions that we're having. So we may be driven, if we're in a bad mood, we may make selections that encourage us to feel more positively or experience more fun or more joy to help us work out of that bad mood that we're in, for example. There's also a body of research that talks about our media selections as a means of self-development. So we may make our selections in order to grow as people or become better people, or to learn something new. A lot of the literature talks about this specifically in response to YouTube subscribers and social media users. That is a very often mentioned motivation. I make these selections because I want to learn a new skill or I want to learn more about a new area. We also make our selections to connect with other people. So almost like a form of social capital. It used to be back in the day where you would watch something or you would try to engage with something so that you could go to school or work the next day and talk to your friends and your coworkers about it in the break room or at the water fountain or on the playground. And now we achieve those same goals, but we want to engage on social media. We don't want to miss out, or we don't want to hear the spoilers. And so we engage we make a selection so that we can engage in a bigger conversation with a wider group of people that we're connected with, either physically in proximity or through social media. We may also make selections as a mechanism for solutions in navigating life's challenges. So think about this idea of social support. So we may make our media selections in order to feel supported, in order to feel as though we're not alone in a given situation, or to recover from stressful days or stressful activities in life's challenges. So again, this is not an exhaustive list, but there are a variety of reasons why we may make media selections. And so a big part of this, again, are the stories that we're being exposed to when we're making these selections. And we're talking about a wide range of stories in terms of the media psychology literature. And we found that storytelling can have very far-reaching and lasting effects when it comes to health-related issues and decisions that we make about our own personal health, how we feel about specific policies, what we think about what stereotype beliefs that we have, what we think about different ethnic or cultural or gender groups. And sometimes these effects are short-term in nature. Sometimes they have longer-term or lasting effects that last for a longer period of time, or they accumulate over a period of time. And so this is one of the most exciting things to me about studying media, because there are so many different perspectives from which we could explore the impact of the stories. And a lot of the early research in media psychology tended to focus on the negative side of things. So how does exposure make you a bad person? How does it make you think negatively of other groups of people? Does it make you more aggressive if you play violent video games? But there's a good side to this as well, where some stories and certain types of content can really help you remember that the world can be beautiful, that people can be kind, that people can be concerned for others, and that we do have some agency to act on behalf of ourselves, but also act on behalf of other people, not just to improve our own lives, but to improve the lives of those around us. And so that's kind of the approach that I take with my research on the positive side of things. I tend to do this focusing more so on entertainment, because entertainment matters. Yes, it's for fun, and yes, it's a good time, but it's also very reflective of our culture. Entertainment content, entertainment formats, the stories that make up the entertainment, they can be reflective of our culture, but they can also influence culture. And so entertainment is really a strong, significant cultural force, because it has a lot to say about what our values are. It has a lot to say about who is valuable, but also what should be of importance. It can highlight joys, but also the challenges and negatives that we deal with as people, or that we should be dealing with as broader communities. And so from an entertainment theory perspective, there's a really large body of media psychology scholarship that's argued for and found support for this idea that our entertainment experiences can fall into one of two broad categories. So there are the hedonic experiences that are purely fun and pleasurable, and these are the ones that we very often think about when we hear the term entertainment. We think most often of this body of work, and this is why we think that entertainment doesn't really necessarily have as strong of an influence. But these are experiences that are purely pleasurable. So examples of this may include movies like The Hangover or Girls Trip. And then there's this body of entertainment that drives individuals to seek more self-focused experiences that may emphasize a sense of personal growth. And these are those eudaimonic experiences where as a result, we may grow as people, we may feel more self-reflective, we may experience a mixture of emotions, some good, some bad. We may think more thoughtfully about the content and the stories and the characters that we're being exposed to. And we may even get some type of fulfillment of intrinsic needs, such as our need to relate to other people, our need to feel competent, or our need to feel autonomous even. And so within the eudaimonic experiences, there are two subcategories. So there are meaningful mediated experiences, and these are those that are really more inward focused, where a lot of introspection takes place, and the emphasis is really on me growing as a person or you growing as a person. And then there are those transcendent experiences, and these two types of experiences are related, and that when we talk about transcendent experiences, we're talking about how I take that personal growth that I have just gone through and apply that to how I can be a better person for other people. And so that's the transcendent experience, getting a sense of myself and others. And so these are characterized more often by more positive emotions, sometimes feelings of reverence or a sense of awe or a motivation to be a better person in order to serve humanity. And so these feelings are often elicited in response to presentations of kindness, or feeling a sense of vastness, like what we may experience in watching the movie Gravity, for those of you who've seen that movie, where Sandra Bullock is really in space by herself. And so thinking about the fragility of humanity and the vastness of the universe, and my role, my little bitty role, yet important role in all of that. So those are transcendent experiences. Each one is often associated with specific genres. So dramas and documentaries tend to elicit eudaimonic experiences more often than something like a comedy. But that's not to say that comedies can't feel meaningful for someone. It's possible that someone had a strong sense of personal growth after watching The Hangover. There's no judgment there. It's about your experience, right? And so while there are genres that are often associated with certain types of experiences, it's really about the subjective experience and what you're getting out of it. And so in thinking about these two different camps of hedonic and eudaimonic experiences, I started to think a lot more about if the eudaimonic experiences can encourage self-reflection and personal growth, it stands to reason that entertainment may be just as impactful when it comes to issues and attitudes related to fairness, equity, and social justice. And so this is where the socially conscious entertainment comes in, where we're talking about entertainment that has themes and messages or narratives that may intentionally aim to make audiences aware or more knowledgeable of certain issues. And these issues could be those that are faced by organizations, by governments, by societies, or humanity as a whole. Some of these narratives may be more personal in nature, meaning that they largely affect people on an individual nature, but they're important to us because of the number of people who are affected by it. So for example, people who are survivors of rape or sexual assault, people who are survivors of domestic abuse. Social issues in this vein may also be social or political, in that they require analysis and critiques of existing social and systemic structures such as racism. Another way that we can think about socially conscious entertainment, we can think about it in terms of those stories that focus on the social issues more explicitly, such as the Denzel Washington. I have to throw Denzel into any presentation that I could possibly throw him into. John Q was a movie from the early 2000s. I'm showing my age a little bit, in which a father takes a hospital hostage in order to get a heart transplant for his dying son because his insurance company will not pay for it. So that is more of a social political theme within that film, and it's very explicit. But then there are also those stories that emphasize historical or current social issues that are either secondary to the narrative or even metaphorical, such as what we saw in Avatar or even the animated film Zootopia. So they may have differential effects, but they nevertheless encourage thought and conversation amongst audiences on topics related to justice, related to empathy for other people, and human connectedness. And so this idea is not new. I don't want anyone to think that, oh, Dr. Sanders is brilliant. I am, but I did not come up with this. This has actually been in our media and our entertainment for a really long time. The inclusion of social and political issues in entertainment narratives, we could go back to the 1970s, and a lot of US comedies such as All in the Family and Good Times, which were regular vehicles for stories on racism and classism, education, and the US welfare system. A lot of science fiction television shows and movies like Star Trek and Doctor Who, Star Wars, as well as comic books and the movies based on them, have long used their narratives to explicitly or even implicitly discuss racism, fascism, xenophobia, reproductive rights, rights of indigenous peoples, protection of the environment. We can go on and on. It's a very long list. And then we can go all the way to today when we think about television shows like FX's Pose that served as a vehicle to inform audiences of and critique a systemically biased healthcare system when it comes to the health treatment of LGBT and particularly transgender individuals. So there are different aspects and different approaches that the stories can take in talking about various social issues, and it doesn't always have to look the same in every narrative. So in a study that a colleague and I conducted on Black Panther, which really became the catalyst for this whole body of research that I'm talking about, we worked from the perspective of third-person theory, which argues that as people, we're hesitant to say that we're susceptible to being influenced by the media, but we're more likely to say that other people are influenced by the media. Some other third group is more easily influenced than we are. We are enlightened. We are not that easily swayed. But there are some limitations to that. If it's a positive story, or if it's desirable content, or if we're part of the key target market or target audience for that particular story, then we're okay saying we are influenced by it. And we kind of saw that taking place in response to Black Panther and some of the race-related themes and culture-related themes that were presented in that film, where we found that people who were very invested and highly engaged with the film felt like they were very influenced by it. And that also had a direct connection with how positive and vital they felt Black Americans were to society at large. But we also found that people, while they generally felt like they were positively influenced by the movie and its themes, that Black audiences actually believe this to be the case more so for white audiences, and white audiences believe this to be the case more so for Black audiences. So we saw kind of this third person idea taking place in response to this movie as well. But on the socially conscious side of things, it was that increased value that the audience members all felt that Black Americans had in response to having seen the film. In another study that I recently did and wrote up last week, actually. I wanted to gain a better understanding of how people respond to when large corporations get involved and make decisions related to social issues and in support of some type of social action. And so in the summer of 2020, I'm assuming that most of you have some type of streaming service or have access to someone else's streaming account. Don't put this in the chat, but I assume that everyone has access in some way, shape, or form. And in summer of 2020, you probably noticed that a lot of them started highlighting and elevating what I call the Black voices categories. So we saw it on Netflix, we saw it on Hulu, we saw it on Disney Plus, we saw it on Amazon, we saw it everywhere. And we saw the same thing happen this past summer, this past spring with Stop Asian Hate, where they were highlighting the stories of Asian experiences and Black experiences, Black actors, directors, producers, storytellers. And so this on the surface seemed like it was a really great idea. And in summer 2020, it was in direct support of the Black Lives Matters protests that were taking place at the same time. And so anecdotally, I was kind of seeing on Twitter and Facebook and talking to family members, and I realized that it was kind of having this mixed response amongst the people that I was talking to on a regular basis. Some people thought it was great. Some people thought it didn't read as all that authentic, and they weren't really pleased with a lot of the stories. And so I said, well, I think that there's something here. So I went out and I surveyed 600 Black streamers. And I found that that was really the case. It was a very mixed response. So even though people were very excited to see the categories present and they felt like it was providing visibility to Black stories and experiences, and that it was exposing all audiences to a wider range of talent, there was still some disappointment in the decisions because they felt like still a lot of the stories presented the same stereotypes and character tropes, that some of the content was really just was really clickbait, and it was old content that they were just reissuing instead of investing in new stories and new content. And others felt like this is just something that should have happened a long time ago. It shouldn't have taken massive protests around the country for you to recognize the value of Black audiences. So it's definitely a mixed bag. So we can think about social consciousness from the perspective of the stories themselves, but also from the business perspective. For the rest of our time together, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to focus more so on the story side of things and share some more findings from different surveys and experiments that I've conducted over, I would say, the last year or so. And so in order to have a better understanding of what I'm talking about there, it's probably a good time to talk about what social consciousness is. And it's this idea that people feel that or are aware that they are part of a larger community of people and that they can be influenced by that community, but also influence that community at the same time. So it's a reciprocal influence. And our levels of social consciousness can vary. It can range from a lack of awareness to explicit awareness that we are interdependent on other people. And so some of our movement through these levels is related to age, where we tend to be more self-centered and egocentric when we're younger, and less so as we develop cognitively and emotionally. But this isn't the only way that we can move through these stages. A big trigger for social consciousness and an advancement toward that is the amount of dissonance or friction we may feel between what our own needs are and what the needs of society are. And that friction or dissonance has to exist in such a way that we begin to think about how we can then be of value and be of value to other people and be responsible for other people. And it's through this kind of understanding that we tend to think about how we can become, be in service to an integrated whole, whether that whole is a family, a community, an institution, or a nation. And so we can think about this also in terms of mediated in entertainment experiences. And so in a survey that I conducted with a group of graduate students actually in 2019, we asked people, how do you define socially conscious entertainment? And what are some examples of socially conscious entertainment that you can think of and that you've been exposed to? So I'm gonna look at the chat for just a second and ask you, in terms of your thoughts, do you think that people more often name the TV show or a movie or music when they were asked for an example? So you can just drop in the chat if you want, if you think they more often name the TV show or movie or a musical artist or a song or a piece of music. And my chat is frozen. So I'm going to ask the moderators if you could kind of give me an update on how people are kind of weighing in on this.
We've got a lot of people saying music.
It looks like a mixed bag. It's like
Music, movies, a couple of TV show people.
Okay.
I think more people are saying music, it looks like.
More people are saying music.
I think, right, Brittany?
Sorry, you're wrong. Most people, 60% name some type of television show. So is shows like Blackish or 13 Reasons Why or Scandal, followed by movies like Love, Simon or Black Panther or 13th. And music was definitely up there though. They named specific artists or they named specific songs even. So Kendrick Lamar was an artist that was mentioned quite often when people provided an example of music. In terms of topics that people thought of, in terms of social consciousness and social issues, race-based discrimination or racism, politics, gender-based discrimination, and mental health were all very often mentioned, which the entertainment content that we've been examining kind of bears this out, where these are the most often elements included in many storylines that we can think of in the examples that you're probably thinking of yourselves. So not only are the issues in the area serious, but we also found that people aren't thinking about these issues separate from entertainment. In fact, people think that they're very likely to encounter socially conscious themes and messages. There's also this fairly high expectation that they're going to see it when they're making entertainment selections. And when it's there, they're going to discuss it with other people. And some people even reported saying, I'm going to seek it out and I make my media selections based on this actually. In terms of emotional responses, people were experiencing a mixture of emotions, some positive, some negative when thinking about their own experience in relationship to the content. Some people reported feeling inspired, and they also reported feeling a high level of reverence, feelings of reverence in response to some of the stories. And another study that colleagues at UT Austin conducted, they found that when we expect to see these themes, when we're given some kind of heads up and expect to see it, there's a positive influence that it has on us. But when we're surprised, by its presence, we tend to kind of shy away from it. We tend to have kind of more avoidance tendencies and we don't appreciate it as much. So a heads up or some level of expectation from the side of marketing maybe tends to lead to a more positive influence or response. So if it's everywhere and if it's accepted, what matters to the impact on our attitudes? And what a broader body of research has found more generally related to storytelling and what we're seeing so far in our own research is that how we engage with the stories actually matter. Our level of engagement, our level of feeling as though we're a part of the story matters quite a bit. And when we're more engaged, we're more likely to be persuaded by that content if there's a persuasive message embedded into that story. The connection with the characters matter. If we have a strong identification with the people present in the stories, it's very hard for us to discount the experiences of someone that we're identifying with. Our emotions matter. they can actually serve as psychological mechanisms or a foundation through which pro-social motivations may be enacted. A reduction of stereotyped attitudes may occur, or even a reflection of our own behaviors. And also the genre of the entertainment matters, not in terms of only certain types of genres being impactful, but in terms of how all these other things function to influence our attitudes. So in thinking about narrative engagement is this idea of psychological convergence with a story. And I have Harry Potter here because there's that section of the Harry Potter saga where he literally jumps into other people's memories, right? He goes into the pensive and he embeds himself into other people's memories, and he's present in those moments. That's kind of how narrative engagement is for us when we're exposed to stories that we're reading or listening to or watching. We become embedded within those stories. And there are different influences that either encourage or discourage the level of engagement that we have. So context can matter, whether we're watching with another person or watching alone, whether sometimes the structure of the narrative matters, if the story makes sense, if it has a logical flow, if it has a great soundtrack. That matters too. If the person on the screen speaks directly to us as the audience member, that can matter. If the room is too cold, that can matter. This is also why when you go to the movie theater, the theater is dark and they tell everyone to turn off their phones. I'm sure everyone has experienced that kind of jarring moment when you're really invested in a story and then you see this bright blue light kind of pop up in the corner of your eye because someone has pulled out their phone, right? And you're totally annoyed and irritated, and it takes you a minute to get back to the story. It's because you've been distracted from the story. Your engagement has been interrupted. And so movie theaters do things in order to encourage this level of engagement so that you forget about the outside world and stay focused on the story world. Sometimes there are some personality traits that factor into this as well, but the effects include effects on our perceptions and our attitudes, even our behaviors or our behavioral intentions, and definitely our ability to enjoy the story. But it also influences our attitudes related to elements that are connected or embedded within the story when it comes to social justice and social issues. And so in a study that we're trying to get published right now, so I accept all good vibes, we did find that narrative engagement, when people are more highly engaged, they experience a range of emotions, from positive to negative to a mixture to elevation, which is a moral emotion that we might feel. But it's only the mixed emotions and elevation that has a connection to social justice attitudes. So narrative engagement matters if it's connected or if it's going through mixed emotions and a moral emotion. That is what connects narrative engagement to influence on social justice, attitudes related to social justice. And another experiment that we conducted, again, this is with a faculty colleague and a group of graduate students. We asked people to watch either scenes from a movie that was a hedonic comedy, a hedonic drama, or a hedonic animated clip, or a socially conscious comedy, drama, or animated film. And so after watching one of these 6 films, scenes from one of these 6 films, we asked them a series of questions such as, how are you feeling? What emotions did this elicit? And we also asked them questions related to their social justice attitudes. And what we found generally is that for people who saw something that was more hedonic in nature, they felt elevated. That moral emotion that I mentioned a minute ago, they felt elevated to the same extent when they were exposed to the drama or to the animated content, and they felt less elevated when viewing a comedy. But for people who saw a socially conscious clip, the comedy and the drama, the comedy elicited just as much elevation or feelings of elevation as the drama did. So again, it's not just about the nature of, it's not just about the type or the genre of entertainment. It's about the story itself. Animated content generally tended to make them feel a little less elevated in regards there.
Hey, Dr. Sanders, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Do you mind if we stop sharing your screen? I think your screen is frozen, and I really did not mean to interrupt you, but we're not seeing your slide. We're only seeing an old slide. So if you don't mind, I know it's going to get you off track a bit.
Oh, no, no problem. Actually, I was close to wrapping up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Sorry.
Let me stop sharing. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me. Brittany, do you have it pulled up? Let me just go ahead and pull it up. I'm sorry, Dr. Sanders.
No, no problem. I'm not surprised that there's been a tech glitch.
Okay, you guys seeing it now? Are you seeing the slide or not?
Yes.
It is showing the
presenter view.
The presenter view.
Okay.
Gotta grab the other screen.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry, everyone.
No, that's
can't have
not
Zoom without this.
yeah. I think we can make it without it. The only thing that I would say in connection to the socially conscious, the social justice attitudes, in terms of the emotions, I was just going to point out that elevation seemed to positively predict stronger attitudes about social justice when the socially conscious content was either a drama or a comedy. And it was negative emotions that seemed to rule the day for socially conscious dramas. So in terms of bigger picture, I would just say that entertainment media and experiences do have a significant role to play. And again, beyond just being fun and entertaining, it's not a benign area of media with limited or no relationship with serious conversations of the day. And this importance includes, but also goes beyond how historically marginalized, minoritized, and underrepresented groups of people are portrayed and presented in media. I would also like to point out that socially conscious messages in entertainment can be persuasive, and that people actually do find value in them and appreciate them in such a way that it doesn't detract from the overall purpose of this kind of content, which is to entertain us and allow for us to find aspects of enjoyment. So that was really the gist of the presentation, and I'm very happy to answer questions. It wouldn't be Zoom if there wasn't a tech glitch.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sanders. This was a really great presentation. I found it very fascinating. You're doing some really great research, and I think you gave a really good overview of the whole area of research, because it was an area that I was not familiar with, entertainment media. So we will take some questions. Let me pull up the chat to see if we have any in the chat.
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. So
if you do have questions, feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the chat. But while we are waiting for folks to come up with fabulous questions that I'm sure you all have, I have a question that I would like to ask of you,
okay.
Dr. Sanders. In particular, because you mentioned towards the beginning of the presentation about media use as a mechanism to connect with others and to act as social support. So do you think that folks are seeking out this kind of entertainment more now, especially during the COVID pandemic where people are very isolated? Do you think that people are seeking out socially conscious entertainment that allows them to connect more with others when people are feeling so isolated? Big question.
I think yes, but I think that people are seeking out media generally more during the pandemic as opposed to before, because it does allow for us to connect when we have been physically isolated for so long, it does allow for us to connect in many different ways. And I think that people are turning to different types of stories. And this is one of the reasons why I really wanted to explore the perceptions related to the streaming content, because that is the primary mechanism that a lot of people are using, not because cable can't, but the offerings on streaming services are so vast, and they offer so many different possibilities for different types of stories. And people were looking for ways to spend their day as we were trying to figure out what working from home and living from home looked like. Now, once school kind of kicked off, we probably all kind of shied away from that a little bit because we had business to take care of. As students and as parents and so on. But we were still looking for these mechanisms to connect with people who were maybe living in a different time, maybe living outside of the pandemic. I remember reading that a lot of people really didn't like when television shows came back and started producing new episodes. They didn't really like the fact that a lot of the shows embedded or included COVID so prominently in their storylines, because they felt like we are living through this. We don't want to see this in our entertainment. But then there were other people who wanted to see their stories and their experiences reflected in the entertainment that they were seeing. So it's kind of a mixed result, but I do think that people were looking and probably still are looking for ways to connect through their media choices, as we continue to see what the next stage of the pandemic, hopefully soon to be endemic, holds.
Thank you. So, Dr. Sanders, you mentioned earlier in your presentation about how social consciousness is as far as media, is a reciprocal influence, how we're influenced and we're influencing others. So it made me think about lessons that we can learn with how we share our own views with others, like how entertainment media is addressing these social issues and we're influenced by it, and how do we share, how are people sharing their views with others related to this?
I mean, it varies. And I go back to Black Panther, because this is when I really started to pay closer attention to what was happening. But I watched people, because I saw the movie 4 times. Don't judge me. I saw the movie 4 times in the theater, and I watched people like congregate in the lobby and in the parking lot, and they were having these in-depth conversations in person. I saw it happening on social media. I saw it happening at my gym, where I missed my exercise class one day because I was engaged in a detailed conversation with my trainer. And then he was like, okay, I need you to go run. So they were happening everywhere. And I think people do use every mechanism that they have available to them to engage in the conversations. Some people are more comfortable engaging in these conversations through social media. Some of them are more comfortable in kind of the smaller interpersonal face-to-face setting. But I think it's happening everywhere, and people are using a variety of mechanisms that they have available to them to engage in the bigger conversation, with their friends, with their family, and also with distant others.
You make such a good point about, if there's one thing that I miss about going to the movie theater, it's the after movie conversation. We have a question from Ebony. Can you talk about how streaming and other on-demand services have affected our social experience of media? She knows that you mentioned the Black Voices categorization, but was wondering if anyone in your research reported other experiences.
They reported a lot, Ebony. Thank you for the question. They had a lot to say in that survey. I'm just scratching the surface of it. So much so that the survey timed out and people emailed me the rest of their responses, because they had a lot that they wanted to say. I think that the streaming services, I think what we're seeing is very similar to what we saw with cable in the 80s. So when you have a lot of choices and you have a lot of availability, there are definitely good things related to it, and then there are bad things connected to it. And so I think the good that we're potentially seeing is the variety of stories and experiences that the streamers have the ability to provide to us. Now, whether they're actually going to do that or not is another story. And I think what really came out in the survey was back to their disappointment with these categories. There were people who felt like this is great, but you really should put your money where your mouth is. Like, develop the new stories. Netflix produces a lot of original content. Hulu produces a lot of original content. So does Disney Plus. Why are you not producing the stories that we want to see that reflect the range of our experiences, as opposed to bringing back all of the old television shows that have been produced and just saying, now here, it's new. And so that's kind of like the clickbait that they were referring to as well. So I think there's a lot of promise there. And I think that there's a lot of willingness on the corporate side of some of the streamers to actually make a good faith effort on that promise. Netflix has restructured a lot of things, but they're in hot water right now for other issues. So we'll see how that goes. I think it remains to be seen if they're going to live up to the promise itself. So I hope that answered your question in a satisfactory way.
Thank you, Dr. Sanders. I have another question, but I thought I'd just make sure. Oh, I see a question now in the chat, actually. Kristen says, I just want to say I love this research. I also feel that through social media, it's taught me history that I didn't know. For instance, there's a movie called Deacons for Defense about a group of men right here in Louisiana that I had never heard of.
Yeah.
So is that an example of how people are using this type of media?
Oh, yeah. And so thank you, Kristen, for sharing that. I wasn't aware of that particular film, or I'm assuming it's a film. But the one that comes to mind for a lot of people thinking about that kind of situation was HBO's Watchmen and the Tulsa Race Massacre, where a lot of people learned about those events for the first time when they saw the first episode of Watchmen. And there was a lot of anger and hostility related to, why didn't I learn about this in elementary school and middle school? Why are there big portions of US history and Black history missing from the curriculum? And so a lot of people report learning about history of different ethnic and racial groups from entertainment. So that's another, positive aspect, telling those stories that, even our own education systems aren't willing to tell us, or aren't willing to share with us. Entertainment can fill some of that gap. Now, a lot of it is going to be dramatized, of course. So it is inspired by real events, or maybe based on real events. But a lot of people often report learning about history from a movie, from a TV show, as opposed to learning about certain events in school.
Do we have any other questions? Anyone to run? Now's your chance
We're
to
chock
ask your
full of
question.
them.
I kind of wanted to ask about tropes. I'm not going to be able to type this out fast enough, but I don't know what my actual question is. I just know I want to ask about tropes and
Okay.
how, I don't know what my question is. I just want to ask about tropes. In your research, did people discuss at all, or current or past research, how tropes impact their experience of media, as well as perhaps the way that they interact with the world? I'm kind of specifically thinking of the trope of the, romantic comedy, and how constantly on social media, it's like, these are unhealthy behaviors, do not emulate these.
Yeah, but we see them so often, and so many of the stories that we're exposed to, we tend to believe that they reflect reality. And so there's this whole body of research called cultivation that talks a lot about that, about how the stories and the messages that we're exposed to in media over a long period of time tend to have an influence on how we perceive and conceive of the real world and make social reality judgments. And so that goes from that relates to what we think about groups of people, to what we think about relationships, to what we think about different aspects of society. And so some of the key research, early research in that area talks a lot about what's called the mean world syndrome. So the more media that you watch and that you're exposed to, because it's primarily negative, especially if it's news, we tend to walk away thinking that the world is mean and that the world is dangerous and unsafe. And so that can be expanded to a number of different areas, just like what you mentioned in terms of our friendships and our romantic relationships and the expectations that we have connected to those. Did that help?
Yes, I like watching the media analysis videos on YouTube from The Take about all these different tropes.
Mm-hmm.
And it really just kind of woke me up to how many different tropes there are.
There are. And again, think about how vast our media diets are. How often are we not using media? In a way, we're using it right now to talk about our use of media because we're on Zoom. It's very, very, very hard to get away from. And when we think about social media, even something like TikTok, there are stories. Those are stories. They're short videos and they're very entertaining, but they're still stories. And so with a vast media diet, it's kind of hard to not be influenced when you're seeing the same kind of tropes presented time and time and time and time again. And we're not made as human beings, the way that our brains function, we're not made to constantly go into deep thought about everything. Our brains would explode, not literally, but we're not made to think deeply about every new piece of information that comes into us. We're made to make quick judgments and quick decisions about what is safe and what is not safe. And the media content that we're consuming on a regular basis and over time, that does say something and influence the judgments that we make. And it does influence whether we think something is safe or whether we think something is unsafe.
We have another question from our colleague, Paul Richeye. Why don't films and TV shows have a bibliography at the end for learning more about the issues touched on in the show, asking for a librarian friend? We know it's you, Paul, it's okay.
I mean, some do. They're usually like the PBS shows, which I personally love. And I think what the closest you get to that today would be for more information, contact such and such organization, right? So we can think of a lot of examples from primarily TV shows where at the end of an episode, they will give you information to learn more about a topic or to seek assistance if the theme or the main aspect of the storyline is something that a lot of people are affected by and may need assistance with coming to terms with or dealing with. We see that, but we definitely don't necessarily see the bibliography the way that you're describing. I think it would be personally helpful, but I think that's also where sometimes the social media engagement comes in, where when people are seeing something and they realize people want to learn more information about a topic, or that people should learn more information about a topic, that's kind of where that extension of social capital comes in, where people are sharing with the masses, hey, if you want to learn more about, I learned about this in middle school about what happened in Tulsa. Here's more readings on this. Here's the foundation that's trying to dig up more history about this and try to identify, remains that still have yet to be identified, right? So we kind of see social media filling some of this gap, but it's coming from us. It's coming from the audience. It's not coming from the producers and the studios. It's coming from us.
Well, I'll add, since it kind of goes off of Paul's question, to finish up, since we're getting close to the end of the hour, if you had to make a watch list for us to take away of socially conscious entertainment? Since
Yeah.
you've given us a few examples, what do you recommend for us to watch this weekend?
This weekend,
Or in general?
in general, Parasite is one that makes my list. Surprisingly or unsurprisingly, season 4 of Supergirl talked a lot about immigration. So I recommend that one. Trolls World Tour is another one. And Zootopia, they both talk about race and ethnicity and cross-cultural relationships. Zootopia more about racism, using metaphors, but Trolls World Tour more about cross-cultural relationships. I liked The Big Sick. It's a comedy, but I thought it was really well done, and it's based on a true story. So I'll just throw that out there. If you're in the mood to shed some tears, if you haven't seen When They See Us, I would recommend When They See Us. If you're not in the mood to shed tears, there's a sci-fi film called See You Yesterday that was pretty well done. There may be like one tear, like the one lone tear, but it was pretty well done.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sanders. So on behalf of LSU Libraries and my co-moderator, Brittany O'Neill, we want to thank you so much for joining us today and for giving the presentation for Media Literacy Week 2021. I know that I've learned a lot. I actually have I was taking notes of all the titles because I'm behind on my movie watching. So I have a lot to add to my watch list. I think we learned a lot about this topic. Looking forward to seeing more of your research in the coming years. Thank you for everyone who's joined us today and for asking your questions. We hope you enjoyed this program and learned something new. You'll receive a follow-up email after this event that includes a feedback survey. Please fill that out and help us make this event better in the future. Your proof of attendance for those of you that need it. And we'll also send the attendees the event recording as soon as it's available. So thank you again. We hope to see you at next year's Media Literacy Week event. Thank you, Dr. Sanders.
Thank you, everybody.